Last Sunday, we began the conversation on buying land in Kenya. We looked at what qualifies as prime area here in Kenya, as well as how to invest, whether you have minimal savings or not. And today, we want to delve more into this discussion. We look at compensation. We look at when to bring in a lawyer when you want to get that land. And so with us is Maurice Okoth. He's the director at Proland Realtors. Maurice, tell us, what is the purchase of land and how many steps do you need to go through just to ensure that you purchase land correctly?
Firstly, I think going to buy land, you have to see the land. That's the basic rule. Go view the land. If you like the land, decide whether you like the land or not. Look at the shape of the land. Okay, if the land is a triangle, ask yourself, what can you put up in a triangle shaped piece of land? Look at the soil. Is it black cotton? Is it red soil? Again, look at the road, the access. And sometimes we advise people to go and look at the land when it's raining, because we've realized that most of the time you can be sold for land that is in a flood-prone area. So when it rains is when you know the real character in terms of even the drainage of water, because sometimes it can be draining from your neighbors and it comes and settles on your plot. Once you've seen the land and you're satisfied with it, you look at the area and talk to neighbors. Okay, neighbors have interesting stories about land. I mean, if somebody has lived somewhere for 10 years, he knows a thing or two about that land. Okay, talk to the area chief, especially if you're buying agricultural land in rural areas. Talk to the village elders, just to have a good background of the plot.
What if it's an area that has no neighbors? This is land that you're purchasing, maybe perhaps off plan,
Yes.
and there are no neighbors around. What do you do in such a situation?
In such a situation, you have to be extra careful, because you have nobody to corroborate whether it's land, whether it's okay or not. And then the next point of call is the government offices. And there are two very important government offices that comes into mind. One is the Ministry of Lands, that is in charge of issuing certificate of search. This is basically, and it has come out through all conversations. And it sounds as very basic, but it's a very important step, because with a certificate of search that is duly signed by the land registrar, it means that the information about that property is as accurate, and government basically guarantees it. Okay? So with the copy of title from the owner, you go apply for a search, which will cost you maybe 500 shillings. It will take maybe a week for it to come out. If you're in Nairobi, where now the land registry is automated, you do it online through the eCitizen portal. It comes out and it's as valid as it comes. And then after that, when you're satisfied that the details on the title are okay as it appears in the search, then the next step is to visit the other government office, which is the survey. Survey still falls under Ministry of Lands, but survey is very important because it's where you're going to buy the map. So with the copy of title, you're able to see the land registration number, which all of us know as the LR number, or the title number. With that, you go to survey, you get a map. So the map will show you the boundaries of the plots, and it will show you the extent, okay, where it goes and where the roads are. The very important thing also sometimes when you get a survey is accessibility. Physically, you might be accessing it through a main road, but then on the map, and especially for those areas where it's very interior and there's no road that you can see, the map shows clearly where the access road is. Sometimes it's not even on the main road, it's behind, and the price that you're given is because it's fronting road, but you'll never access it using it. So it's very important to get the map.
Many Kenyans shy away from getting in land surveyors to come in just before they purchase land. Why do you think that is so, and what should they do about it?
Cannot avoid a surveyor, especially if you're spending upwards of 10 million. And the surveyor is also important because the surveyor, outside confirming the locality of the land, he also checks the beacons. Okay? Sometimes, people just put beacons wherever, but it's the surveyor who is going to give you the correct bearings of the beacon of all the the relevant positions. Then you now zero in on the vendor, the owner of the land. So the owner of the land will, of course, have to prove that he is the owner of the title. And we've seen places where people also fake IDs. Okay, so he will give you a fake ID that is the name of the title. You've done your search, everything is correct, it comes out in the name, but it's not that person. So again, the lawyer comes in. Okay, the lawyer needs to confirm different ways they can be able to look at the immigration department, just to confirm that this person is the person that you're talking about, especially if you doubt that. Again, at times, the property is being sold by a company. So you have to understand, what is this company? Who are the directors? Okay? What are the shareholding? Sometimes the person who is selling you the land has 0.1% shareholding, and he has no voting right, and so he cannot purport to be the owner of the land. You have to go again and do a search on that company at the AG's office, come up with, check the CR12 to confirm that these are the directors, these are the shareholders, and these are the people who can be able to sign the sale agreement. And then, of course, now the sale agreement comes in. Okay? The sale agreement is prepared by the vendor's lawyer, the person who is selling. Okay?
So they're the ones who draft the sale agreement?
They are the ones who draft the sale agreement.
Okay.
Okay? So once they draft the sale agreement, you take the sale agreement to your lawyer. Again, Kenyans like shortcuts, and of course we like, you know, quick things. So instead of also engaging your own lawyer, and in any property transaction, there has to be two lawyers. The lawyer for the vendor and the lawyer for the buyer. Because the two lawyers know they can give guarantees to each other. Okay? And they'll be able to understand the process. So you take your draft sale agreement to your lawyer. He confirms that everything is in order according to the stipulations of the law and the regulations for sale of property. Once that is done, you can be able to pay down, now you'll be able to pay down your down payment, and then of course the registration documents and the original title is now given to your lawyer, and you make your payment to your lawyer. And that's one thing that people sometimes don't get right. You don't pay the money to the seller.
You pay to your lawyer.
You pay it to your lawyer. Let your lawyer give it to because you know the lawyers have a professional indemnity to safeguard you. So if that money is lost, you have a recourse and you can go through LSK. But if you decide to give that money to that person and it ends up directly and it ends up, there's no money trail, and sometimes people like transacting in cash, which again is a wrong thing. For any property transaction, whether you're buying it for 10,000 shillings, do a banker's check, do a transfer. You know what that helps you with? It helps you, it gives you the confidence that the person who is selling the land has some record somewhere. Okay, so if he has a bank account, then that bank has his details. So if things go wrong and an investigation is done, then they're able to pursue that from the bank. When did he open the account? Who is he? So that there's a background, a whole background to it. But
so you don't advise much on cash sales?
We don't have, and in fact, any cash sale that you do, the risk is 100% on you. Okay, you can't bring it back to the professionals. You can't bring it back, and it will take even a longer time. For example, if you're duped, to recover. But when there's a paper trail, people can be able to, the money came in this date, it was transferred to this place, it eventually went wherever it went, but at least you have a place for recourse. Once that is done, then of course the transfer process starts, and once the transfer has been done, and when I say transfer is that the names has changed from the seller's name to your name, not necessarily the title to come out. Then of course the owner of the land now can be given the money. The lawyer of the owner of the land can now transfer the money to the lawyer of the seller. So now he can be able to use the money. But before then, technically it should not, your lawyer will give a guarantee that upon successful transfer, then the monies will be released. And the seller should be confident with this sort of guarantee.
Why do you think people don't want to get to engage lawyers in these transactions?
I'll not speak as for lawyers, but I'll speak generally as professionals. Again, being who we are, I think we like saving money. So if a professional comes to you and tells you something that you already know, you feel that you don't want to pay him the money. Of course, everybody thinks that the lawyer doesn't do any work because he's just signing a document. He already has a template for it. So why is he charging you, 10,000? Why is he charging you 20,000? And for you, that's a cost. Okay. So you try save that money, not knowing that you're putting yourself at risk. Okay. So the advice that we want to give Kenyans is that you'd rather spend that 10,000 and have the lawyer take your liability, rather than have no recourse at all. That when you're buying land, buy as if you're going to be duped. Okay, so that you know that the next thing you'll be going to court. And also just start.
So buy when you're ready.
Buy when you're ready for the worst.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you're ready for the worst, then you are going to take the necessary steps to reduce your risks. These risks will always be there, but you can always mitigate them. Okay, and the idea here is to mitigate.
You look at two scenarios. Yes. One where you have invested perhaps in the route of the standard gauge railway. How do you go about that? And the second scenario is, say KETRACO comes in and they're applying electricity. What happens to those who have already invested in land within these areas?
There is a misconception and a bit of confusion between the two. Okay, on one hand, the standard gauge railway, when it came up, government was buying the land, and it was being done under what we call compulsory land acquisition. Compulsory land acquisition, before the new land laws came into place, was being done by the Compulsory Land Acquisition Act, which of course was repealed by the Land Act. So once that happened and the new laws came into place, government now would come and acquire land for public good. Now, the SGR is for public good. So when they come and take your land, they compensate you for it, and you no longer own the land. Now, on the other hand, if KETRACO comes in and wants to use your land, then it's what we call just using the land but not taking it. So technically, they'll not take your title away from you.
But they use your piece of land.
Use your piece of land, which now is called a right of way. It's a way leave, okay? And then this way leave is registered on your title as an easement. So the easement is an interest that allows KETRACO to use your land. And there are various ways of looking at it. And the way they compensate you for that is quite different, because they're not taking your title, they're not actually buying the land from you. So they give you a percentage of the market value. Right now, I think the rule, which is still compensation. Yeah, but looking at it, on one hand, for compulsory land acquisition, we're talking about 100% compensation. So if your land is worth 500 million, they pay you 500 million. But on the other hand, if it's for a way leave, then they will pay you, the rule of thumb is around 30% for a big piece of land. They will only consider paying you 100% if it's a very small, maybe it's an eighth, and the impact of the transmission line is over 50%. And again, another misconception is that once that way leave passes over your land, you can't sell it, and which is not true.
Steps to purchasing land may seem too many, but for those who have been duped in recent times, not all is lost. You can still purchase land, but make sure you follow through these crucial factors to ensure that you get the right land and at the right value.